Okay, terrific. All right, super. So we do want to welcome you all. We're so happy that you got up early and came and are going to be part of this wonderful presentation. So we're excited, obviously, to have you here because we're kicking off Career Day with this, and there are a lot of sessions throughout the day. So my name is Bonnie. I'm a career advisor, as I mentioned, here at SNHU, and you're going to see me and Kelsey in the Q&A responding throughout the session and collecting questions. There's going to be a 15-minute Q&A session that we're going to be holding at the end. So before we get started, just wanted to move on to a couple of announcements as far as some housekeeping and mechanics. So know this session, as I mentioned, is going to be recorded. There's no obligation to have your camera on. So if you wish, you can turn your camera off and you can use the Q&A box to participate in the session if you wish. You can turn on captions for this session by selecting the More button at the top of your Teams screen and selecting the Turn on Live Captions from the drop-down menu. But after you've turned on captions, you can then use the ellipsis, the three dots button in the caption bar to select your preferred language for the captions. Your microphone will remain muted today to reduce all the background noise so that you can just focus on the presentation. The Q&A session will be available throughout the session, and we encourage you to share questions and reflections. So we ask that you be kind, refrain from using any inappropriate language or sharing any offensive content. We obviously are all here to learn and engage with this community, and we do appreciate your cooperation. So please do not photograph, screenshot, or record anyone in attendance, and presentation slides may contain clickable links. So for those viewing the presentation on a mobile device, we will include the links in the Q&A at the end so that you will be able to retrieve them without taking you out of the session. So you'll also see that Teams offers helpful presentation options like changing the written language of the slides and the opportunity to move through the slides at your own pace. So if you move the slides and you wish to get back to the slide currently being discussed, just select that red box that says sync to the presenter at the bottom, and this will not impact anyone else's viewing experience, just yours. So we also ask that you please save any questions towards the end of the session. Last, we have in regards to access and accommodations, we just want to share a couple of pieces of information with you and serves as a reminder of the resources available for all of our community members. So your experience here at Southern New Hampshire University, it is very important to us. And it's our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. So if there are aspects of this presentation's, the design or delivery that present barriers to accessibility, please notify the appropriate departments. For online students, please contact the Online Accessibility Center by emailing oac@snhu.edu or by phone at 866-305-9430. And for campus students, please contact the Campus Accessibility Center by emailing cac@snhu.edu or by phone at 603-644-3118. And for staff and faculty, if you're attending, please contact the Human Resources Office by email at hr@snhu.edu. All right, now you're finally through with all those housekeeping things, and it's time to introduce our presenter, and I am thrilled to be getting you all started with Share Your Career Story, presented by Dave Munn. And Dave's career story is about the things that make him different, his purpose, and his highest values. David's story is about his whys, or those superpowers, the purposes and values behind the what. And we are glad that you've accepted David's invitation to career storytelling and how it's going to help you to find the right career and life fit. So in today's employment landscape, there's many employees that leave companies due to inconsistencies and values. So it's so important to find the employer that shares your values and needs to hear your career story. So let's learn how you can tell a career story that articulates your values, experience, and creates a fit. So Dave is a military career advisor at SNHU since 2020. He has 10 years of experience in career development. He is a retired member of the Army National Guard and the Air Force Reserve. And Dave, now I'd like to turn it over to you to begin the presentation. And as I mentioned before, please know there will be a Q&A session at the end. Take it away, Dave.
Well, thank you very much, Bonnie. I appreciate that introduction. It was awesome. And I want to thank everyone that's here today who got up early to attend this presentation. So I'm glad you came. Uh, my superpowers and my values are not the what of my story, but they're the why and the how. These are the larger pictures of my career story. I can use these in so many different situations, but they're the foundation of my story. So let's explore the foundation of a good career story and how to find a good fit. What I'm hoping that you'll take away from this presentation on storytelling, career storytelling specifically, number one, we're going to talk about the goals of storytelling. In other words, what are you trying to achieve with your story? The second, why storytelling is important. In other words, why should you listen? Number three, how can you know your audience's why and their story? Number four, how can you know your why and your story? And then last, what goes into a good career story and where can you tell it? So let's start with some goals for storytelling. So this is so first of all, the goal of storytelling, it's not about you, but it's about your value and your values to readers, listeners, and viewers. Okay? These are the people that need to hear what you have to say, that you have a good story to tell, and that your story matches what they're looking for, matches their career story. So, career storytelling is a story that talks about your values and your value. It has to be relevant to the reader, concise for gatekeepers. So those would be the HR people that review your resume. It has to be specific to the industry and company, and it has to be appropriate to the company and the role. So that's some of the goals. So let's look at why storytelling is important. So first of all, think neuroscience. Okay, so storytelling really connects with our brain. So when we're telling a story, or you're listening to a story, haven't you ever felt like when you hear that emotion and you hear that story, it really lights up your brain, and the facts bear out that actually when you tell facts or use facts, it lights up two areas of your brain. When you tell stories, it lights up five areas of your brain. So it's a real explosion in your brain of just ideas and thoughts. Okay. And emotions help us retain those facts. It helps us build trust, and it works for left and right brain people. All right. So the second reason is that the stories make us relatable. It connects us to other people. Okay. And storytelling takes vulnerability. We have to kind of let people into our heart. Okay. Now, let me just make sure that I let you know that stories and your brand hide between the bullets on your resume. So this is infinitely practical. And this is often what's not spoken and what needs to be spoken. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but stories take courage to tell. They spark connection, conversation, and action. Stories are the currency of true connection. Okay. And it goes back to what Bonnie said earlier. It's the best predictor of chemistry and fit. All right. So let's move on. The last most important, really important reason, okay, is it's relevant now. It's important to today's work environment. All right, so this is some statistics from a recent study by Flex Jobs that found employees are stuck in jobs they dislike and 30% of them want to quit. Okay, and this survey gave 5 reasons for why employees might say, take this job and shove it. Okay, quote unquote. One of the key takeaways from these statistics is the poor cultural fit with the employee's values. Okay, so this is what I want to really help you do is look at how important the values are to them and to you. Okay, because that speaks that our current culture, the COVID era, whatever you want to call it, has impacted that corporate culture. So we need to get to the bottom of what are the true values. Okay, so we've established the importance of storytelling. So let's start with how to create a good story. Okay, and as mentioned earlier, relevance is important, which means we have to know our audience. So let's look at our audience. All right. This is the chicken or the egg argument. Okay. What do I do first? Do I know my audience first, or do I know myself first? Okay. So for me, this kind of is comparison to dating. Okay. For me, we have to see that significant other. We have to hear them. We have to hear their values. We have to hear their story. Okay. And so that's why I'm starting with your audience. All right. So we have to know their values. We have to understand their story. Okay. And there are we have to know about their industry, the company, the positions. Okay. And so Bonnie is going to put in the chat or in the Q&A some resources for how to do company research. Listen, this is when I talk to learners, one of the biggest concerns is I've applied to 50 different jobs and I haven't heard anything back. Okay, this is a really important piece of knowing your audience and really speaking to what they need to hear. Okay, because you want to find people, you want to find employers that want to hear your career story. Okay, so Bonnie put those in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay, so this is about company research. All right, and there's some things that we want to start fleshing out. Okay, now this is a modern approach to career development and persuasion, right? You know, anybody who's taken a public speaking class on persuasion, you have to know your audience. Okay, so we've got some links for this company research. I thought this was a really good resource. It gives you a lot of the ideas about how do I find that. One way is to go to the company website. A lot of great information on there. That's what I did with SNHU when I applied. I found out what their values were. I found about their culture. Do they walk the walk? Okay. There's some other resources, Shapiro Library and Handshake. And you'll see the links in the chat or Q&A from that Bonnie's going to put in there. Okay. So when we're doing our research, right, and we're looking at that, there's some things that we want to consider that are really going to help us in this job search and in application. Okay, these are the considerations that you want to have or you think about when you're researching employers. So these are things that you want to find out, ask yourself. Okay, so values and mission. Remember I said you could go to the company website and find a great deal of information about their values and their mission. When you read that, does that make sense? Pros and cons. There's another great resource called Glassdoor. Okay, and Glassdoor is a lot like if you've done a lot of shopping. My wife, QVC, but she looks up the reviews, finds out what's the good part of it, what's the not so good part of it. Glassdoor is very similar. Okay, so you go there, and again, it's just like anything else. The more you see something, the more it has an element of truth. Okay, so that's just one piece of the puzzle. But on Glassdoor, you do get the pros, cons, and advice to management. Read about those. Okay, the challenges of the industry. So this is the advantage of reaching out to connections. So these are a warm or cold connection. So warm connections are people that you know personally. Cold connections are people that you might reach out to. So you could do it through LinkedIn. And you don't so much want to ask about a job, but ask about the industry. All right, and there's a good reason for this. Richard Bowles, who is passed away, he wrote a book called What Color is Your Parachute? And he says, when you're making a career transition, it's better to try to stay in the same industry. If you have to change roles, fine, but it's much harder to change role and industry. So if you've worked in an industry, whether it's I work with veterans, so that's the defense industry. A lot of times you do the work that you do in that with logistics or whatever, okay, is transferable, but you want to find out what are some of the challenges of the industry. Okay, and then further, so if you go to Handshake, there's events on Handshake. A lot of times you could get involved in some of these events. You can ask employers, what are the challenges of hiring managers? Now, I used to work with Google, and when talking to some of their hiring managers, their project managers, one of their favorite questions was, what keeps you up at night? And you would be amazed at the answer. It's not what you think. You would think it would be all the bells and whistles, all the what's, all the hard skills. No. Most of them say, I could teach you whatever you need to know, but I can't teach you how to be a good person. I can't teach you how to problem solve. I can't teach you how to collaborate. Okay, so you want to find out those challenges because we're going to talk about ourselves next. We want to find out what that corporate culture is like. For military, a lot of times I'll encourage them to look at, is it a flat organization or is it hierarchical? Because the military is a hierarchical organization. And last is the theme or ethos of the company. Okay, so Southern New Hampshire has this really great ethos about breaking the status quo. I love that because that means we don't do things the way we've always done them. We look for new ways to help learners. All right, so now let's make a shift over to, now that we got to know our significant other and we're starting to like what we see, how do we start with our career story? So again, we're always thinking about the what as the more practical, but honestly, it's more about the why. Okay, so we have to find out, what are our career values? What do we find valuable? So for me, I like helping people. I get to help people. Okay, I'm an encourager. I'm a natural encourager. So that's a high value at Southern New Hampshire. Okay, and Bonnie's going to put in the chat, or I keep saying that, chat, Q&A, let's just say that's the same thing, some assessments that you could take to kind of flesh out some of these career values. Then again, these are some questions that you want to ask yourself. I love this because this is sort of the light bulb moment for me for learners. When you can start asking yourself these questions, you're gonna see how practical this really is. All right, so this is an acronym. I'm a military. I love acronyms. Most military people do, right? So WHYS. Okay, so think to yourself, what drives or motivates me at work? So when I'm at work, there's always, again, the pros and cons, but what do I really like? What part do I really like? In what industries will I thrive? Again, thinking about, where have I been in my life? Sometimes it's retail, sometimes it's whatever it is. Think about that industry. Okay, what work uses my skills and strengths? Okay, so you could go out to Indeed, Simply Hired, and you can look up some of these roles and you can see some of the skills. Or better yet, you can go to some of those sites like Handshake and you could just put in some skills that you have. Collaboration, whatever it is. And you can find roles that utilize those skills. Okay. And then also, what experiences can I leverage to make that transition? So everybody has experiences, whether you think you do or not. If you're a member of a student organization, volunteer, practical experience. So, a part-time job. What experiences, if you love helping people, let me tell you something, there's so many companies out there that is really their highest value, because they, like Southern New Hampshire, that's their highest value, is learners. And I get to help learners. So that's really helpful to have that part of the story. All right. So let's talk about your career story. All right. So let me just get to the bottom line here. Okay. When we think about who we are, think about why we're different. Okay. So a lot of times employers will, think to themselves, I've looked at 10 resumes that look exactly like yours. What makes you different? Okay, so this is where your knowledge of that company come into play. All right, so if I'm going to tell a story, and we're going to talk about that, from a company that wants a problem solver, maybe we can combine this with customer service. So I work with learners that have multiple parts of their story. It's not just it's not a cookie cutter situation. Okay, so how do I go about helping someone who has multiple points of divergence? All right, I could go to my team. I've got great resources. Okay, what's my superpower? So my superpower is encouragement. Okay, I was in a position where it took me 9 months to find a job. It was painful. It was very painful. And that's what I really connect with my students. That's my superpower, because I don't give up on people. Okay, so you have to think about, what is your superpower? Okay, what makes you different? And this is ultimately, let me just take you right back to the interview, okay? Ultimately, these are the questions that employers are asking themselves about you. Okay, and this is what you have to ask yourself. Okay, why and how do I do what I do? So I see so many learners that have the resume with tasks. Okay, so if you're going to have tasks, think about which one of those did you really enjoy? Which one really made a difference? And why did you do that? And how did you do that? Again, we and I think employers look at it like this too. They have a job description. They know what a customer service rep does. Okay, but why do you do it? And how do you do it? So that's what you really want to describe on a resume and to describe in an interview. Okay. The next question they're ultimately going to ask you is, why are you interested in this industry, company, or position? Okay, so that's where you really want to dig a little bit deeper than you're an industry leader. Okay, fine. Everybody knows that. What else? What else? And that's where this research comes in. Why us? Why this position? Okay, and last, why am I different than others? Okay, so let's move on to types of career stories. All right, so this is the sort of the meat of the meal here, okay? And this is really important. Okay, so here's some of the types of career stories. The one is the Dragon Slayer story, and I'm going to describe these, but this is a really great story. This is sort of the money shot on a resume, in a brand, in an interview. That's the question that they ask you. That you and again, interviews are fluctuate. Some questions you do better on, but the Dragon Slayer story is the money shot. That's the one they're the most concerned about. That can this person actually learn to do this job? Okay. Have they overcome challenges? The pain solution story, again, remember we talked earlier about the pain point for the hiring manager. What are they really going to want to hear? What story are they going to want to hear? They're going to want to hear that story of, this is where I overcame the status quo. The fit story we're going to talk about, that's a great story. That's for when you're connecting with people, when you're interviewing. The brand story, another great one. So that one we'll talk about. That's the one that you kind of put out there for social media. All right, so let's kind of talk about the Dragon Slayer story. Okay, so remember early on, I said on your resume, you have these tasks, okay? So take those tasks and think to yourself, where did I really make a difference? Okay, what task really set me apart? Maybe it's the one that you really connected to. Was it analyzing something? Was it working with people? What was it? It usually involves some kind of a challenge, action, or impact. And in the career development field, we call it the STAR story. And I'm sure you guys have heard that: situation, task, action, result. Okay, so that's kind of how you want to conceptualize what you're doing on your resume. This is what makes it practical. Okay, because it can't just be, I did A, B, and C. It has to be, I did this because of this. This is what I did. This was the goal. This was the difference that I made. This was the impact. Okay, that's a great story to tell. All right, and you have to think about, again, going back to what they're looking for is, we're looking for somebody who can solve a problem in a difficult environment. My military people are perfect. They do that all the time. How do they do that? So that's what you want to tell. The next one, the pain solution story. So again, this is going back to, what's the hiring manager's pain points? What's the biggest problem that they face? Okay, what keeps them up at night? No, and basically on down the line, why do they hire someone in the role that they're targeting? They're looking for someone who can do that. They can address that pain point. Okay, and then again, we can't just leave out the what's, because what are the skills that kind of set you apart? Okay, all right. This is a great one. Okay, now in an interview, you're always being asked the question, tell me about yourself. Okay. And so this can be, kind of an innocuous question, but sometimes disconcerting too, right? Like, what do I say about myself? Not, you don't want to give biographical information, but let me just tell you, and Bonnie's going to put in the Q&A a link, and this gentleman does a really good job of describing the fit story. Okay, I love this. And this is kind of a long pitch. So the short pitch would be the short answer, right? To tell me about yourself. This is the long pitch. And it's okay to say this, okay? Because employers are wondering, they're looking at your resume and they're trying to figure out why you did what you did, okay? So as you look at your resume, a lot of people have a very set chronological order to their career. Other people do not. They have gaps. A lot of the military spouses I work with have gaps in their employment. A lot of COVID related gaps. Okay. So you can group things together. Okay. And tell your story. And whenever you're thinking about those stages of your career, what was your favorite part? Okay. A lot of people will say, well, I didn't like this, but that's why I moved, and that's why I moved on. Well, you really want to make it positive, right? So what was your favorite part? So for me, my favorite part of my previous employment was I got to help people. I got to help students. Okay. I liked walking them through the process. Okay. I liked all that. But then there was an improvement that I desired. I wanted more. I wanted less status quo. I wanted more emphasis on learners. I wanted to be able to learn myself. I'm a lifetime learner. That's the improvement I desired. And the transition I made. So again, this kind of answers the question, why did you do this? Now let's just be honest here. Some of our jobs, we needed money. Okay, we worked. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you can't find what was the positive part of that job. Okay, it's okay to say that was kind of just a stop off. I needed money. I liked a little bit of, I liked there was a positive part of it. Okay. But then the transition that you're making, that's the more important part. So why us? Why are you coming to us now? Okay. What's the purpose for you taking this job? Do you just need money? Do you want a career? What do you want specifically from us? How are we going to help you? Okay, that is a great story. The last one is the branding story. Okay, so this is what happens with my learners. So, we've got the resume, got the cover letter, and those are for specific jobs. We customize that for each individual role. Okay, when you're talking about brand, you're pulling out your superpowers. Okay. And some of it is titles. Okay. Proud of what you do or where you're at. Fine. But you can also pull out your strengths and your superpowers, because that lets people know, wow, Dave is a real encourager. He's a servant leader. And that's really the kind of story you're telling. And that's the story you tell on social media and in career conversations, when you're just talking to people about who you are and what are your strengths. Okay. How you approach these challenges. Okay. And what's the benefit or impact of your actions? This is what I did that really made a difference. I love talking to learners about this because this starts to rise to the surface. And if you let this happen, it will. And that is the strength of your story. It's not just a piece of paper. Here's your resume. I'm more than just a piece of paper. I have a story. And I want to tell it, and I want to find employers that want to hear my story. So that's been the goal of this presentation, is to help you pull that story out and tell that story to as many people as want to hear it. But you want to find those people that really, really want to hear that story through their values. Thank you very much. I'm so appreciative. that you got up early to share this time with me. I want to thank Bonnie for presenting me and introducing me. If there are any questions, we'll handle those.
Definitely. Wow, Dave, thanks so much. I've never really thought about my interests and strengths as superpowers. So I don't know if I'll wear the shirt, but I would definitely now look at things a little differently. And there's also, it made me think about for centuries how families have, handed down their heritage and their stories, and there's a lot of power in that. And it also aligns to, what the values were, right? So let's definitely take some questions. If you want to put them in the chat box, we'd love to, give Dave an opportunity to, to answer those. So, let's just take a look here in the chat. And Kelsey, if I'm missing anything, let me know. Okay. And know again that this will be covered in a actual recording. So you'll have this to refer back to. And I did put some of the links into the chat box, but those will also be provided too. Okay. So we're opening this up, and please post your questions here. So there was one here. I have a chat running that sometimes blocks things. Let's see. Do you know any, this is Nicole. Thank you, Nicole. Do you know any tutorial links? And it just keeps moving up on me. So hold on a second. Do you know any tutorial links to get formatting steps for a resume? Yes, we have a number of resources that you can use. There are, for instance, skills first, and we can put, I can send that off to you, Nicole, and we can put that, if we have it, Kelsey, can we put that link into the chat box for that? And then also feel free to reach out to your career department here, and anyone in our department can definitely help with formatting your resume. So feel free to check in with us, and we can assist with that. And the key thing for us is when we're formatting your resume, we also mainly want to focus on those stories. What were those accomplishments that you had? So be prepared for that discussion too. And the best thing usually is to get an idea of what you're looking to apply to so that we can make it relevant and relatable.
Bonnie, I see one there from Ashton. She has a virtual interview on Friday for a government agency. Any advice on how to sell myself without being face to face? You know what? Again, if you kind of think about this program, what are they looking for in your story? Okay, so that's really how you quote sell yourself. Is you talk about the things that are important to them and to you. So those experiences that you have, those skills that you have, that story that you have is how you sell yourself. I don't know if the initial interview is going to be more like a screening interview or whatever, but again, I would kind of go in there with what kind of person are they looking for? And that's always a hard part about government because they really don't give you much of that information, not like a civilian employer. But what are they looking for? Look up the agency on their website. A lot of times you can find really good content about the type of person they're looking for. Are they looking for an analyst? Are they looking for an administrator? What are they looking for? So that's another good way to sell yourself or to promote that story. So Joel had a good question. How do you walk the line of sounding experienced but not too old for entering the tech industry? Okay, so again, how does your previous experience relate to the tech industry? Okay, and again, thinking about how current your experience is. So, you always kind of can walk in there with sort of like, I have this basis of experience that I think would be helpful, but I'm not too old to learn. Okay, so you can come in with that approach because typically you're probably going to be interviewed by millennials or Gen Xers or whatever, but they're going to be younger, most likely. So that's kind of the approach I would go in there with, thinking about how did my previous experience help me with this current experience with the tech industry, and how do my skills compare or match up with that?
Dave, you talked about who would be hiring or who could potentially be hiring individuals, and Kathleen had a great question. Do employers understand the value of first-generation graduates, and is this a topic of discussion?
Gosh, first gen, I'm a first gen, and absolutely, they value that. I think we're really good. We're really good storytellers. We're really smart about how we research and how we find out about a company. So a lot of that is, from my experience, is when you learn the hard way, you kind of say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to learn the hard way anymore. So how do I not do that? And that's what really gives us value. That's what really helps us when we're interviewing. Because again, going back to Joel's question, as a first generation, what do we have that they would be looking for? And again, a lot of it is, I can tell a good story. That's where I came from. That's what first gen people do, right? I don't want to generalize, but that's what I did. I heard that throughout my family. So how can I relate it to an employer? I hope that answers the question.
Dave, there was also another question in here from Kay in regards to, and Kay, congratulations on always moving up. But yeah, when you get to that interview stage, it is really, the practice does pay off. So yes, please reach out to your career department. The question was, can we offer assistance on helping to answer interview questions?
Oh, absolutely. That's one thing career development does, is you talk about mock interviews.
We can do mock interviews. We can also
go ahead.
Right, practice on, have a lot of great resources, and it kind of helps to craft that story, and that format and formula is very powerful. So yeah, we can help you continue to drive that career upward. Reach out. Any other questions? Some that I may be missing here. Kelsey, there's a lot of scrolling here, a lot of support, a lot of great comments in here.
Yeah, great questions.
I think we may be at our time right now, so not quite sure if there's any additional questions that we may have missed. Kelsey, are we, anything final?
Did Sandy's question in the chat? How do you
explain? Mm-hmm.
Yep.
How do you explain your story of when making a career change that's completely different from your first career? So Dave, that was a question in there.
Say that again. Can you give it to me one more time?
Sure. How do you explain your story when making a career change and it's completely different from your first career?
Well, again, I think that's definitely a challenge, but I would look at, what did I do previously that relates to what I'm interested in currently? That's what I would do. What are the transferable skills?
Right, and that's a great question. Yeah, definitely.
It is.
And you're always wanting to throw over, like Dave had said, transferable skills are always there. All things that you've done in your first career, I'm sure there are things that align with that second career. And it's kind of like you're on one side of the river and you want to get to the other side. So you keep throwing over things that are relatable, as Dave said. And so keep building that bridge to get to the other side through those relatable skills.
Another thing, Bonnie, that kind of amplifies what you were saying, Bonnie, is, and it goes to the heart of this program, this presentation, is reach out to people in that new industry. So, this is something that I experience all the time with veterans. They're coming from a veteran culture into a completely different culture. So it's really important to start making connections in that new industry and in that new culture, so that you can start learning what are some of the pain points, what of those transferable skills is going to be the most impactful.
And Dave, we're going to close with this question. Amanda asks, do you tell this story on a resume? The resume is such an impersonal and regimented list of information.
Yeah, so it's looking at, and remember I was saying, when you look at the bullets, that's the impersonal, impractical. Okay, so what you're trying to do is say, okay, what did I really like? Which one of those tasks really gave me the most, what made the most difference to me, and why? Why did it make a difference to you? Did you get to, I got to do follow up. I called the customer. I problem solved with them, and it doesn't always end up with a great, I don't know what kind of story, but, it doesn't always end up um, positive, but it's really the process. It's how you went about doing it. So it's not just the what, it's the how and the why.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate everything that you've done. And we have a couple more questions that we weren't able to take, and we're sorry about that. We can always get back individually if we have you there in our system. So at this time, we're going to just thank you for attending here. And as a reminder, as I said, these sessions have been recorded and will be available in our Career Services YouTube channel in about 2 to 3 business days. So thanks again for joining us, and have a fabulous rest of your day.
Thank you.
And I'm going to put those links in the chat.